Hello friends, bienvenidos. My name is Jen, aka Jen Kahlo on social media, your local witchy friend and intuitive guide through the occult. As always, my lovely husband and co-host is David, aka Premier Pulls on social media.
Hi everyone. On today's episode, Jen explains twin flames.
Welcome to the show. Grab a chair, make yourself at home. Jen's got stories to share, you'll never feel alone.
So just a little recap of last week. I went live with Amy Energy for the Capricorn full moon, and it was so much fun going on my first TikTok live like that.
Yeah, I feel bad. I was actually really busy. We've had a pretty hectic week starting from last Sunday, Father's Day. We're finally winding down a little bit. We had some guests visit us from Colorado. Miss Mozzie, she is a big supporter of the podcast, and it was really cool having her stay with us. We did fun things in San Francisco, and as we mentioned a couple episodes ago, you got your early birthday gift, right?
Yes, I went to go see Megan Thee Stallion. It was so much fun.
She's your twin flame?
Yes, she is my twin flame. All the hotties there were so positive and such good vibes. The second chillest concert I've ever been to. The first chillest was Imagine Dragons, but
that was really fun. Yeah, so like I said, we've been super. I think I was actually at Yosemite when you went live, Yosemite National Park. So it went well, though, you said?
yeah, it was so much fun. We didn't get any trolls or like random read my cards. Everyone was just good vibes and listening for their sign, and it was so much fun because we did both astrology and tarot at the same time.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know a little before that you went live and it was just Lucy, our beautiful dog / your familiar, just taking a nap, right?
Yeah, she just looks so cute sleeping. I was like, let me just live record this or live stream this. And then I also put on music on YouTube, really calming music. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a fun stream. I know sometimes people just kind of put their pets or, just something in the background, but it was really cute watching her sleep and snore. So maybe we can get more of that. Well, I'm glad that event went well. And speaking of events, we have something coming up this weekend too, right?
Yes, this weekend I will be at Vanna and Matt's wedding, and I will be providing tarot during the cocktail hour. That's going to be so much fun. Thank you so much for trusting me on your special day, and may you have a beautiful, flawless, stress-free wedding. We're so excited to be there. And just a reminder that I am available for events, house parties, bautizos, weddings, anything.
That's so awesome. Yeah, it's funny how we've kind of churned around full circle. Remember when I would be doing the events when I was like DJing?
Oh, yeah.
And did the parties and weddings, and now you're the entertainment.
I was your roadie.
Yeah, now I'll be your roadie. Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. Yeah, I used to be a DJ, for anybody who doesn't know. And again, stay tuned. We have a pretty big announcement for our first July episode. We have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. We've been working very diligently, pretty much like a whole part-time job, maybe even full-time. We've been putting in a lot of hours and putting in work to hopefully make this podcast even better, grow the community. So we're really excited to make some big announcements in July.
Yes, definitely. Cannot wait.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, why don't we start with the community discussions, but it doesn't sound like we had any comments. So maybe not that many cancers that we know, huh?
No, I was going to say cancers are just so unproblematic, so chill. No one had anything to say versus Geminis. We had a whole bunch of comments.
Oh, yeah. No, Geminis definitely needed to let us know what they thought in the best way possible. I really appreciated those comments and feedback from the Gemini episode, but nothing from Cancer. And our next zodiac sign will be probably the best zodiac sign, if I say so myself. We're going into Leo season.
Yes, we are. And I'm sure all the Leos are going to be like, oh my gosh, that's me to a T. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited. So no discussion post, but if you are listening to this episode and you're like, oh, I just missed it, go ahead and do it. We can touch on it next week as well. But what are we talking about today, Jen?
We are talking about twin flames. I'm sure that that's something that y'all have heard around the internet and just this new wave of mysticism. But what is a twin flame? So, the common definition and understanding of a twin flame, it's someone that just gives you an overwhelming spark initially. It's very quick. It feels like you've known each other forever. It could also be very challenging and overwhelming because you get this like burst of really like love at first sight. You're struck by them, but then it becomes very challenging very quickly. There is a big belief that you only have one twin flame. So when you meet them, you cannot let them go. I've seen some trains of thoughts that say that you can have multiple twin flames, but the common definition is one. And there is also another aspect to where people can believe that they are like reincarnated soulmates, like a soulmate from another life. So if you're lucky enough to find them and identify them, don't let them go. Or that they are even a piece of you that was separated from you.
Okay. And is it purely romantic or could it be like a platonic twin flame?
Most of the time I've seen this in a romantic context, but you will find some people that use this platonically, like
Okay.
a soul sister or something. But most of what I see and what we're going to focus on today
Is
is
a romantic.
romantic.
Okay. So, yeah, tell us more.
I think it's very problematic, unhealthy, and I do not like the term. If anyone is like, is this person my twin flame? I'm like, I don't even need your money. I don't even need to draw the card. No. They could be great. They could be one of the loves of your life, but I personally don't believe in twin flames.
So the concept itself is what you have a problem with. And it's basically because it narrows you down to like one person, correct?
Which is not a problem. That's what marriage is. We're married, right? Like I narrowed down to you. The problem lies that it promotes the infatuation phase, which is not realistic to a healthy long-term relationship. It also promotes a lot of delusion, fantasy, love bombing, codependency, and just staying in a toxic relationship longer than you need to. Because the belief of like, you cannot let them go under any circumstances. It's supposed to be challenging. That's just unhealthy.
But is that the basis of it? It's like, this is the person who you're meant to be with no matter what. That's basically
Yes.
the best. Okay. And then would you say that's the same thing as a soulmate or is that something different?
It depends on your definition of a soulmate, but specifically with twin flames, it comes with the territory that is going to be karmic, that it's going to be tough.
Got it. Okay. So it's not meant to be an easy.
It's not meant to be easy. Like if it's easy, it's not pushing you to grow. Like with the twin flame, you're going to have this immediate infatuation and then you're going to fight and then you're going to work through it and you're going to live happily ever after.
Okay.
But
So hero's journey with a relationship, basically.
Yes, actually.
You find your person. There's it's very storyboard, very formulaic.
yes.
Okay.
So what many people point to as like the origin of the twin flame that is commonly like this is legit because it came from here is from ancient Greece in Plato's Symposium. He explains that early humans comprised of two connected bodies, but the gods feared their power, so Zeus eventually separated them into two. This is why two people sometimes feel whole when they meet.
Okay. My pop culture reference. This is almost a perfect recreation of that movie with Will Smith, Hitchcock. Do you remember Hitchcock?
No.
So Hitchcock, the plot of the movie is this dude who basically he's a superhero, but he's kind of a problematic superhero. He doesn't really give a crap about the city. He just has the powers and he does the saving, but is kind of an ass to the city. Sidetrack along the lines of like The Boys, which I keep wanting to make you see, but you refuse to, which is one of my favorite shows right now. But anyways, getting back to the movie. So basically he kind of wakes up in a coma. You don't really know too much about him, his background, and he has superpowers, just the generic, like flying, super strength, whatever, invulnerability. And then as the movie spoiler alert if you haven't seen this movie, which is I think almost 10 years old. As he progresses, he realizes that there's another person, and somehow he ends up finding like a publicist to help his like PR as a superhero, and that publicist is dating somebody. And how the movie basically ends is that they're both gods, and he had lost his memory, but they're destined to be with each other. So she's like, I just can't get away from you. So they talk about like when they were in Egypt and like the Civil War, like all like the historical events, and she tries to like escape him, but there's this like magnetism that brings them back together. However, when they're together, he loses his superpowers. So when they're together and like they're meant to be together, I don't know. I can't remember if she loses her powers, but he definitely loses his powers. So they have to continue to like separate and find their way back to each other. And it's like, in this case, it's like an eternal cyclical relationship of like, they are destined to be each other, but it's not good when they are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very similar. Actually, that's very interesting. In English, like British English, but also like American English history of twin flames, I guess just English speaking history. The term twin flames was coined by a writer, Marie Corelli, in 1886, her novel A Romance of Two Worlds. That's where the first specific phrase twin flames was found in the English language. But then from there, a similar term called twin rays came about like 1930s, 1940s from some cult leaders named Guy and Edna Ballard. They started a cult called the I Am that had some very interesting like undertones of nationalism and white supremacy and some stuff like that. So
we really got to get away from these topics.
I know.
Throw some fun things on the podcast. I feel like our last ones have been.
But I think this is fun to.
No, I'm kidding. I mean, it's definitely super interesting, and I love that we have these conversations. But we need to throw a happy, feel good one in here.
That was cancer season, but anyway, I feel like that's really just the point of this podcast, to really educate.
I know. Yeah. No, I know.
Anyway, so then from there, a person was inspired named Elizabeth Clare Prophet, which is kind of interesting, that last name, who
I wonder if it was a stage name.
I have no idea. But then she popularized the concept of twin flames between her teachings in the 70s, 80s, but then she released a book in 1999 where she mixes like Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian beliefs to argue that twin flames are two people that have this supernatural magnetism and connection that they need each other to reach this like enlightenment or salvation. And then from there, many cult leaders have been inspired by this domino of works. Yeah, I just don't really like this concept for a variety of reasons. But what do you think hearing all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it's very poppy and very in the, just our general social medias. And I mean, I've heard the term, and I feel like I'm not really plugged into some of these trends. And I didn't really know the whole concept behind it. And I feel like on a superficial level, people probably don't know. Almost like our phrenology episode, right? It's the aesthetic. It's like, oh, that's cute. I see it everywhere. But again, one of those episodes when you're digging deep a little bit, and I don't even think you have to dig that deep. It's a little troublesome on, just kind of knowing where it comes from, and that idea of like perpetuating a relationship that may not be good. But I'm gonna go into my thoughts as far as like relationships, if there's not anything else that we need to know about this concept.
Yeah, there isn't. I don't want to steal your thunder with like the brain science of infatuation and the life cycle of relationships. This is how unscripted it is, and I'm like, oh crap, is he going to talk about that, or am I going to talk about that?
Well, I can tackle what I know. And I think we'll start off with the fact that there's 8.1 billion people in the world, right? So, and I know you and I have talked about the concept of twin flames before outside of the podcast, and that's one of the things we both agree on. It's like, well, okay, you're saying there's like a strong spiritual or whatever magnetism to another human. There's 8.1 billion people in the world. What if your twin flame is in like South Sudan, right? What are the chances that you're going to find them? I think just that fact alone discredits if you, as a person, are a believer that there's a twin flame concept and you have found your twin flame. What a coincidence that you found them, close by. I guess with the invention of the internet, that does spread a little bit, but I don't think to the point where, like, if it was a true concept, twin flame could be scattered everywhere. The randomness of you finding, like, the person you're going to meet that's maybe across the world is just seems a little bit unreasonable. Because even in the dating apps, it's like you set a radius, right? And I feel like most people don't go beyond like 5 miles.
Did you know that there is like from what I've heard from friends, like a Tinder Plus or whatever, where you could be a passport bro and pay to, even though you're physically in this location, put yourself in another zip code?
That makes sense. No, that definitely makes sense. But it's like, I don't know, you kind of find your significant other, like you order or decide where to go for food. You go on Yelp, what's open, set a 3 mile radius and look at how many stars it has. So, I think there's outliers, right, in everything. However, with, again, the concept that you're going to find your twin flame semi close to you seems a little outlandish. So I think just that in itself discredits it. But I would like to talk about more of the psychology of a relationship. I think we can use ours as an example. I don't think we have, anything beyond special. We work at it, definitely. And we've had a good relationship. Now with this podcast and this endeavor, we have actually a good working relationship too. So it's worked for us. But I did take a course when I was going through my major called The Psychology of Love. And one thing that I found super fascinating was that our professor, and I mean, this was obviously research, and when it comes to relationships and things of that nature, most of it is going to be like case studies and self-reported feedback because it's not as like scientific. In regards of like, you can't really measure too well the controls. There's always going to be variables. But she mentioned that contrary to popular belief of like that opposites attract, that's not true. She said if the psychology and the research shows that it's best to find someone who you actually align with more than you are not aligned with. My personal thoughts on that are that I think at the beginning when you're, kind of like what the Twin Flames talks about, the beginning of a relationship is always super exciting. I think you see everything with rose-colored glasses and the other person can do no wrong. So I think when we get that popular saying of like opposites attract, it probably stems from the fact that like you're meeting somebody new, it's exciting, things that may be red flags right off the bat, you don't see. You may even create excuses or justifications for that person. But like you mentioned earlier, that wears off pretty quickly. I think it's not something that, lasts forever. And there's different stages to a successful relationship. There's the first stage which is infatuation, the second stage with is growth and development, and then kind of like the final to latter stage is that like the healthy codependency of like you get that endorphin rush not from the little things but for more of that like long-term stability with that person. As far as like the psychology and the brain chemistry of it, when you meet somebody new, there's obviously the physical attraction. A lot of it does point back to our biology. If, you subscribe to the idea that our main purpose is to procreate, which on a biological level, like that does kind of make sense. Obviously, we have higher brain thinking than that. We have our own decisions to make, but on an initial level, attraction can be based on like, is this a person who I could see myself, raising a family with, having kids, and maybe even on a subconscious level. So that kind of plays into it. There's also been studies of like pheromonal attraction. So they say like if you can't stand how your partner smells, it's probably not going to be a good fit. We love each other's smells. We're always smelling each other. So I think that was a good fit for us. And then lastly, it's hormones, right? You have endorphins that are being released. You have, I want to say serotonin. I could be wrong. Dopamine, and then cortisol. I think cortisol is what's called like the love hormone, which basically your body creates an actual like chemical reaction to that person that you're attracted to. And the more you see that person, the more interaction you have with that person, the more that hormone is released. And then you do become attracted to that person. And it gets to a point where like when you're not with them, then you have the brain chemistry or the physiological reaction of like not having that basically dopamine and cortisol, whatever those pleasure hormones are. And then you can have withdrawals just like anything else. So
cortisol is actually the stress hormone, but oxytocin is the love hormone.
I think, yes, it's the stress hormone, and I could be wrong. This one, please don't quote me on, because I'm not up to date with my hormones, but I do also believe it's kind of like those kind of like spicy things where like at first, you eat spicy and like you would think that would dissuade us from continuing to eat spicy. I think there's something about the stress hormone, because stress in itself is not negative, right? So what is stress? It can manifest itself in different ways. You can have increased heartbeat, your eyes open wider, you can start sweating. So all those physiological things don't necessarily equate bad. So if you're with somebody that's like giving you a stress reaction, that's not a bad thing, right?
You're right. I just also Googled this. You're right.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yes.
So, so that's kind of the attraction and the psychology of like how what we would call fall in love with a person. What's really interesting is, and again, this isn't for, I would say it's the majority. Obviously there's outliers like with everything else, but the reason you can bond with your baby immediately is because there's psychological cues from a baby's face. Again, with the person who birthed the baby, there's a lot of bonding hormones that come in. So you don't need to build up to that, like loving your baby. You automatically love your baby. And that's a biological evolution of like, obviously, us as mammals and humans, we're very vulnerable. We need a lot of protection. A lot of animals out in the wild, they're born. Some are just kicked outright and good luck. But humans do need a lot of care. As infantiles, we're super vulnerable. So how the baby gets that care is from, whatever, again, psychological cues, the hormones, and it's an instant bond and attraction to usually the maternal figure, but also with the paternal, because, again, with nature, if there's nothing holding you to that like person, you would just leave. So there's also bonding with usually the paternal figure. But yeah, so that's the psychology of love, I think is what you would call it. And then, obviously when you do the what do we like to call it on the podcast? The bedroom tango? What do you call it?
The mattress mambo?
Yes, the mattress mambo. There's a whole another plethora of hormones that are released. Obviously, in an excited state, you also become vulnerable. And that's also the reason why there are some people who can't engage in intimacy without that like personal connection, because it does also elicit like a hormonal reaction to the other person. So tell us your stories, listeners. But that, as I understand love and relationships, that's kind of how I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, anecdotally, I felt that instant attraction, like, oh my goodness, with like almost every person I dated. If I believed in twin flames, I would have believed that everyone.
And I was going to ask you about that. And let me go ahead and finish and I'll come back to it.
I would have believed most people I dated were my twin flame, because for most people I had that instant infatuation. Little did I know I was an adrenaline and stress junkie, because I liked that rush of like not knowing someone but getting to know someone and then falling in love with someone. And I couldn't have stable relationships until I met you, because as soon as that wore off, I was like, I don't feel stressed out anymore, therefore I'm no longer enticed.
Yeah. And again, that's kind of what I mentioned about the stressful. It's not always a negative connotation. But one thing I was going to ask is, do you feel as, I mean, you can use you as an example and then kind of your general view, but do you feel like as a younger being, maybe you could fall more into this ideology of like twin flames, soulmates? First, because again, like we talked about in the phrenology episode, our brain is not fully developed. So I think you're more easily influenced to get romanticized by these ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Younger people are definitely vulnerable to this. Also with the twin flames, the fighting or the like conflict aspect, I would have been like, whoa, this matches the story. Because I also fought with every single person I dated. And the exception is you. I have never fought with you the way that I fought with like my previous partners, which is a good thing because we did things differently. And that is what is leading us to this long-term relationship of almost 9 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember, I think one of my big stipulations was like, you know, we definitely need to get to know each other first and establish a friendship. That didn't mean like we couldn't like seek a romantic relationship, but I definitely wanted you to be somebody like, again, I got along with, our values match, our personalities match, our big life decisions match. You know, obviously there's always some turmoil in relationships, and it's not always super easy, but I've never found it difficult with you. And I feel like a lot of people don't believe us. I know sometimes we have friends who are like, well, what do you do when you're like pissed at your partner? Or like, do you go to the couch? Or like when you guys yell at each other? And I mean, we've never yelled at each other. We've never as much as like slept in separate bedrooms, things of that nature that I feel like a lot of people assume that comes with that territory. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think you and I just definitely align really well on what we believe. And, I think our communication style also is very good for a positive relationship. That's also something that's super important, is just communication in general. And beyond that, not just the communication with your individual, but I also do think, and it's not impossible, but it is also good. It helps having people who understand like your culture, understand your practices. Like there's things that you and I just inherently know from, coming from a certain culture that I wouldn't have to explain to you, or you wouldn't have to explain to me. There's like deeper things, but one big superficial thing that we have is that, usually we know if we're going to like functions with our like Hispanic friends or Latin friends, like we know if the start time is a certain time, we give it like an hour. So if it starts like at 2, we know if we show up at 2, we're going to be there helping set up. So that's one thing that like I don't have to explain to you and you don't have to explain to me. But if it was somebody from like another culture, they could be like, well, they could be stressing out saying like, well, why aren't we there yet, or why aren't we leaving? You and I get it. On that note, I do hate being late. I understand that there's a cultural component to it, but I do not like arriving. Like if you tell me at 2, I'll be there at like 1:50. And we've kind of gotten in some interesting situations where I'm like, I'll tell, if I'm like cooking dinner or having like a friend dinner, and I'm like, okay, let's be here at 3. And then they're like, oh, okay, we're just leaving. And it's like 3. Like, on a personal note, even though I understand the culture of it, like if I invite you to my house for dinner at 3, like the food's going to be hot and ready at 3.
Yeah, you're an interesting outlier when you're hosting. Yeah. But anyway, I don't think that's a bad thing because I appreciate when the food is on time. But I feel like relationships are work. I'm not going to say they're not work and it's effortless. We have to work at our relationship, but previous relationships, it felt like moving a mountain. Like just this extreme arguing, bickering, yelling at each other, cussing each other out. Like, it was bad.
Wow.
Yeah. But with you, it's like fine tuning. Like, okay, this thing didn't go as planned. How can we do this better next time? Let's process our feelings. It's not the same at all. A lot of people are using like the word toxic or toxica. I was in a lot of toxic relationships in the past, and it's just so different. And both are work, but I feel like one is just straight up insurmountable.
Yeah.
Beating a dead horse.
Yeah. I also, one thing that you and I talk about pretty consistently is like, we get to reap the rewards of our, the fruit of our labors, right? We work hard at a relationship, but we also get the benefits of that. What are some things that you think that like we get to reap from that?
Just not having to question the other person's heart, intentions, etc. Like, I know when we have a disagreement, it's not going to be the end of us. It's like, okay, we're going to process and we're going to feel our feelings. And then by tomorrow, latest, we'll be good.
Yeah.
And I know that maybe right now is not the time, but in a few hours, I could say how I'm feeling and he'll understand. I just feel that security.
Yeah. And I think of it a lot of it, again, sometimes it's because we miscommunicated our intention, and I feel like sometimes that's one of the things that like we work through. So for example, if I say something, that's not what I meant to say, and I can tell you that I said, I'm so sorry, I see how that came across, I do apologize, that was not my intention, this is what I meant to say, and this is what I intended by these words, and vice versa. And I know sometimes I think, well, I don't really appreciate how you said that, but then when you explain it to them, it's like, okay, I see your point of view. And I don't think we get stuck on it. I do see a lot of couples who they'll maybe get to that stage, but then hold resentment to the other person. Like, well, you still said it, or like, you made me feel this type of way and you made me have these emotions, and I just can't move past how you made me feel. But I think with us, what's really nice is like, we will say things to each other that maybe, again, the other person doesn't receive well, but I feel like we're really good at like, this is what I meant. I do apologize for making you feel the way you did. And then we move past it. I don't ever think we've really been hung up on anything. Do you?
No, I don't. But with a lot of the reading requests that I get about like, oh, I think this person is my twin flame, when they're like, they put their hands on me, they're a serial cheater, they disrespect me and my family, just some big things where it's like, you've tried for so long, or it's just a straight up boundary that's not healthy to cross. Like, why are you still working at it? And they're like, that's my twin flame, the only person on this earth. Like, I will never be happy, I will never love again.
But it's like, you're not happy now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they feel like because it's their twin flame, they can be happy one day, and that it is something that they can fight for because there's nothing else. There's no other option.
Yeah.
I just don't believe
that's so scary.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's very scary.
Yeah. And you said you've kind of had requests of that nature.
And I tell people, like, I'm not the reader for you. I don't believe in that unless you're willing to hear something else, but you might not like it.
Yeah, yeah. And then what's the other thing you say? You're like, you don't even need a reading for that. Well, you're very big on, like, you shouldn't have to, like, you word it really beautifully where it's not that you shouldn't have to fight for love, but it's like,
you deserve to be loved as you are authentically.
Yes. Because sometimes you'll be like, receiving requests. It's like, well, does this person like love me? They broke up with me. Should I get back together with them? And it's, that one I will say, like, if you do break up with somebody, I know sometimes with relationship, it is the timing, right? I think sometimes people can be in two different places in their lives, and I think they're no fault of their own, just the timing didn't work out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like they shouldn't be together. It just means at that moment in their life, they shouldn't be together. What do you think about that?
I agree, because I will say one of the people in my past, that was the reason they dumped me. They were like, we're just in two different worlds right now. Like, you don't get it and I don't get it.
Yeah. And we even have talked about our relationship that our timing was pretty perfect down to like the month, right? Had it been a few months before or maybe a few months after, it wouldn't have worked. It almost didn't work because I remember I had asked you out a few times and you were like, no. And then I always said like, well, I'm sure we've told this story, but like it got to the point where I was like, well, I'm not going to pursue, like, if you're not interested, I don't really want to pursue it because, and not in a bad way, but it's like, you know, maybe this person's just not ready. And I had told myself, I was like, this is the last time I'm going to ask. And if she says no, then that's okay. Like, I can move forward. Luckily, you said yes.
Yes, it's funny how that worked out. And then I almost hit you with my car.
Yes. And you did not know my name.
I was having such a bad day, a rough day, and I was like, whatever. And then here we are with a dog.
Yeah. With a dog and a podcast.
But some questions to ask yourself: is this toxic infatuation or is this a long-term relationship? I believe that if they are making you feel worse about yourself most of the time rather than better, like, do the good times outweigh the bad times recently?
Yeah. Also, your partner should never make you feel bad about yourself. And there are times where you need to have conversations with your partner about like constructive criticism or like, hey, I see that you're doing this and this is why I'm bringing it up to your attention. But it should never be with like ill intent if they're weaponizing that, like making you feel bad, which it's scary to think that happens. Because you and I always talk about like, I can't imagine being in a relationship where it's like contentions, physical, abusive, just because at that point it's like, what are you doing? But not to discredit any domestic violence survivors, because one thing that I did learn being with you in a healthy long-term relationship, I think before I was in a long-term relationship, I would always be like, well, why don't like you just leave? Like, it's just, if you don't want to be with that person, just leave. But it's not that easy sometimes. I think there's nuances to it, and unfortunately, a lot of times it can even come down to financial. Like, you're dependent on that person. So I try to be a little more careful with like, there's always more to the picture. I think in a perfect world, it's like, you know, if you're in an abusive relationship, just get out. And that's what I would encourage. But I also don't, I think, judge or like look down at anybody who doesn't like immediately get out, just because there's more to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also asking, does this person straight up disrespect me?
Yes.
Like, often, on the regular?
Yeah.
Not okay. Do they go against my core values? Do they not take my feelings into consideration? Do they put you in a worse position physically and emotionally? Like, I unfortunately know someone who got cheated on and then they got an STD. So like they put their health in danger. Or, when they get petty, they will blast them on social media, make lies, slander them.
Yes.
And it can cost them like their job. It can cost them connections with their family.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like, I don't know, we talk about those difficult circumstances like finances, and now you throw in like possibly having children together, right? There's a lot. I want to say this belief is dying down with our generation, but I feel like in older generations it's like, well, we just have to stick together, because of the kids. For the kids.
Yeah.
And I don't think, kids aren't dumb, I think they see the dysfunction. So like, you're not really staying, it's not really helping anybody. So, get out if you can. And then there was those like shows in the 90s, like Maury or like Dr. Phil, like Oprah, where there would be people in like abusive relationships, and the mental gymnastics or the justifications were so extreme that they'd be like, well, like, for example, I think I saw an episode where like one partner was hitting the other partner violently. And that person was like, well, obviously they love me, because if they weren't hitting, like, by them hitting me, they're risking going to jail. So like, they love me so much that like, basically they're risking going to jail. And it's like, no, dude, they're like hitting you. Like, that's just not okay. But I don't think that's necessarily like a twin flame thing. It's just dysfunction and codependency at that point.
Yes. And my therapist taught me the difference between codependency and interdependency. So codependency is I cannot function without you.
Yes.
I was in a lot of toxic codependent relationships like that where I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It was bad. Interdependent is that you are both able to function independently, but you still love being with each other. So this person waters your beautiful flower of a self and you both grow nice and tall, but you still love being in each other's company.
Yeah.
It's not like if they leave, all of a sudden you crumble.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's, and again, I feel like we have a healthy relationship, but I don't think it's anything above and beyond what should be the norm. And that is one thing you and I have. Like, I mean, even for example, with the concert you just went to, I really didn't want to go. And I think that was okay. I know people who would be like, well, I pay for the tickets and you're not going anywhere without me. And it's like, I really had no, what's it called? Like intention or like excitement to go. I would have gone to be with you and I'm sure we would have had a lovely time. But I'm the one who offered like, well, like, why don't you actually go with somebody who wants to enjoy the music and the ambiance, and you did. And just like you have, I have it. And it's like we have our own hobbies. We have our own, independent things that we do. But at the end of the day, coming home to you or, going to bed together, it's like, it's always nice. And I always look forward to it. I knew that we were going to be super solid was our first overnight trip together. We went to a cruise and we were basically in the tiniest little cabin for like 7 days. So obviously like that's a good test just because like if you're done with that person and you're just annoyed and you don't want to see them, like that's probably a good indicator. I think trips are a good indicator to see how you get along with that person. So the trip was fabulous. We had such a wonderful time. At no point were we like upset with each other. And I think the very next day, like we weren't living together at this time. So I was like missing you already the next day. And I was like, wow, I've spent 7 days with this person in like the most intimate setting. Like we had maybe like a foot of like separation the whole time. Like we're at each other's hips. And the fact that I wasn't tired of it, I thought was like a really good indicator of like, okay, this is definitely a person I could see myself being with.
Yes, I remember that. And that was a really beautiful feeling. But ultimately, I always thought it was so cheesy and that it wasn't true, but it really is. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?
Yeah.
Per Mama RuPaul. Yeah, as I'm getting older and healing myself, I'm realizing like it comes from within. Like you've loved me through some of the darkest stuff, but it's like I'll never be happy if I don't love myself. So I've been on that journey, especially this year.
Yeah. And if the listeners are curious, I've always loved myself.
Yes, you have.
I'm pretty amazing.
Living up to the Leo brand.
Yeah, no, if anything, I need to be a little more humble. So, all right. Well, a beautiful episode. I think it did start a little dark, but I think towards the end, we kind of found some beauty in relationships. And if you do have any relationship questions, Genesis is available as a spiritual guide. She is not a couple therapist, and I'm not a therapist either. So no actual like that type of advice. But if you need to look to the cards or the stars, you can always reach out to her. And where can they find you, babe?
They can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Jen Kahlo, or if you prefer to get in touch by email, tarotwithgenesis@gmail.com.
Yeah. We're also just reminding everybody, if you would like to subscribe to support the show, you can do so for as low as 99 cents a month on Spotify. We are working on actually building tiers out for our listeners to actually give something back. So far, it's looking like exclusive content, but, we'll keep you all updated.
Yes, definitely. Remember, you deserve to be loved as you are, authentically and enthusiastically. And the magic within you makes the world a more beautiful place. Blessed be, and signing off.
Bye, everyone.